All right. Well, today I am here with Matias Brimmer and Gypsy Schindler. My name is Ian Martin. I am the Events and Marketing Coordinator at ACWL-Nuveen. We are super happy to have both of these artists here today. They will both be in the Rendering Identity Show, which runs from April 28th to June 10th of this year. There will be a closing reception on June 9th from 5 to 7 p.m. Both Matias and Gypsy will be at that event to speak. This show focuses on portraiture and how it conveys identity. Before we all get started, if we could all just share our pronouns. Mine are he, him.
Mine are she, they. Either one, good.
Cool.
Mine are he, him.
All right, great. All right, so I'll give a little background about how we became familiar with both of your work before I let you both introduce yourselves. Gypsy, you had a show at the Fountain Street Church that we became aware of. And I think a lot of the work that was at the Fountain Street Church in Grand Rapids will actually be in this show as well, which we're super excited about. But you also were familiar to ACWL because you helped create the mural or created the mural behind ACWL-Nuveen. So we were familiar with your work from that as well. And Matias, our assistant director, Sue Wink, saw your work at Blue Scream at the Muskegon Museum of Art Regional Exhibit. She saw that work, just thought it was amazing, really cool portrait, and asked that you could be a part of the show. So that's how we became familiar with both of these wonderful artists. If you could both take a moment just to introduce yourselves, tell me a little bit about yourselves as artists and as people.
Who wants to go first?
Would you care to take the lead?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Gypsy Schindler, and oh goodness, I'm from Michigan originally. I was born on the east side in Lapeer, Michigan, which is but I lived in Grand Rapids for a long time. I got my BFA from Kendall College of Art and Design and my MFA from Eastern Michigan University. And then, for the last 20 years, I've traveled around the Midwest, teaching, taught at Kendall for a while, I've taught at about 6 different institutions. Right now, I'm teaching at MTSU, which is Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is south of Nashville, just to give a geographical reference. And I've also done a lot of commercial work, mural work, decorative stuff. I worked at the Capitol building in Lansing for a little while, which was an interesting and strange job. Recently got married. My wife, Joey Quinones, works at Alfred University in Western New York. And we have 2 dogs, and I have 2 stepsons who are her 2 sons. And yeah, that's a good general for right now. Go ahead, I'll pass the torch.
My name's Matias Brimmer. I'm an artist who lives in West Olive, Michigan, on the west side of the state, like in between Holland and Grand Haven, for those familiar. I studied art at MSU, or I grew up in East Lansing for a while there. My family traveled when I was younger, and we kind of settled in East Lansing. And so I started painting there and really seriously approaching art. And like I said, I just graduated with a BFA from MSU a couple of years ago, and I'm looking at going on to study in New York at the School of the Visual Arts to try to get an MFA. But my work is primarily figurative and portraiture, although I do really love landscapes. The Impressionists were the first thing that really turned me on to painting. And I love paint and mark making and art in general. So I guess I'll leave it at that for now.
That's a great introduction. Thank you both for that. So as you know, the title of the show is Rendering Identity. What role does identity play in your work and the subjects that you choose to paint? And I don't know if we just want to leave it free form, if whoever wants to step in first.
Well, I'll step in there. We'll just go back and forth.
All right.
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay. Oh goodness, identity is pretty much the center pillar for me. Always has been. Portraiture grabbed me pretty early on, and I think because I grew up off the grid, so my parents, they built a cabin in the middle of nowhere, literally in the middle of the woods, northern Michigan, and so we, real small town. Had a graduating class of 21 students, and so I've just always been fascinated with people and connection and faces. And so, gosh, it's just been a running theme for a very long time. But it seems like every sort of change in my life that happens, really, I end up coming back to how do I redefine myself, right? When I was 23 and I came out of the closet, as we say, right, or figured out who the heck I was in that regard, I did a lot of self-portraiture, and then when I was I think 35, I kind of hit a midlife crisis kind of situation, and that was yet another redefinition of myself, and that really I really started to think about just even more fluidity, gender-wise anyway, for myself. I'm not trans, but I don't know. I'm a child of the 90s, so the pronouns and my she identity is very ingrained. But I'm probably exist within the non-binary area somehow, right? Some days it's more, some days it's less. I get mistaken for a man a lot, which sometimes I understand and sometimes I don't, so that's been my most recent sort of introduction to identity within my own work. And there's that whole conversation is really fascinating to me. Society right now is in a huge time period of restructuring and re-identifying itself in so many different ways and so many different issues and areas of focus. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, to piggyback off that latter statement. I do very much agree that like we are living in a moment of like almost like societal level identity crisis, so to speak. And I don't say identity crisis is like a bad thing inherently. Like chaos is where there is opportunity for new things to happen, right? And so I think that we have to kind of go through these like turbulent moments of change to push forward. But as far as identity directly relates to my work, I mean, it does, in that identity, like when we were talking about identity today, it has become a bit of a buzzword, right? Like you say identity, it means like, usually like referring to a marginalized identity, right? Or an identity that exists outside of like the normative kind of like cis het white male, etc. Subject that is assumed. But in reality, identity is simply how we understand ourselves at all, right? So it can't not be part of what I'm doing, but I think that it doesn't take like a very conscious for position usually, and certainly not in the pieces that are going to be in this show. I think that a lot of the time with my own work, and especially with portraits, which are not which are not necessarily of me, except that anything that someone paints is on some level a self-portrait, you know. I think that I am trying to understand myself through these paintings. Like I'm using them to kind of like grasp blindly towards who I am in some like big melodramatic sense. But I also, I don't usually try to concretize like an endpoint in terms of like finding myself, because I do think that it's like this is a search that can't have an answer. It kind of comes back to what you said a second ago about like this constant like reevaluation, right? It's almost like dialectical. You know, we are how we are, and then these other circumstances come in, and there is some kind of a conflict, there is some kind of friction, and then things change, and this becomes the new status quo of identity, right? So I think that the way that identity plays into my work is that it is like this, it's almost like echolocation, right? Like, who am I? I'm going to bounce off of this piece to try to find out.
That was a great word. I'm gonna steal that.
Echolocation, or
Feel free.
Echolocation, yeah. I was like, oh, that's perfect. Yeah, this bouncing back and forth. Yeah.
yeah, I like that.